So it's been a few days since I took a shave, and I thought while I was doing this I would talk about a section in Ada by Vladimir Nabokov, where he uses a razor blade as an example of the interrogation of time. And he does this in the fourth section of Ada. Ada is the first of Nabokov's novels that I ever read. I read it when I was in college, maybe a sophomore, I can't remember. And I've loved it ever since then. I reread it earlier this year. I had to buy a new copy because the copy I just showed you, which is the copy I bought 35 years ago, is that right? 35 years ago, is missing the first 30 pages or so. And there are people who will tell you that the first 30 pages of Ada can be skipped. But they are people who probably aren't watching this video. So the moment that I'm going to read from Ada, because that is what I'm going to do. The moment that I'm going to read from Ada today talks about a razor blade. Excuse me, I need to find a razor blade. There we go. And Veen is using the razor blade as an example of how time behaves, how time accretes. So I will read that section, and then I will kind of go back through section 4 and pick up a couple of other particularly beautiful sections or quotes. Section 4 is short. There are 5 sections in Ada, and each section is shorter than the preceding one. When Nabokov wrote Ada, he talked about, and he wrote about this, he talked about it in interviews, and he also wrote about it. He wanted to write a book that wasn't just about time and memory, but actually induced the experience of the passage of time, or induced the experience of the accretion of time. This is harder than it looks because I keep wanting to look at the camera, and the camera is backwards when I try to shave. Oh, I have a mole here. I always cut. I, of course, didn't shave for many, many years. I had a big beard, which some of you will remember. And I'd forgotten how much I enjoy shaving. But not every day. How's it coming along here? It's time for me to clear all this off as well, so that the merge here is smoother. So, all right, let me read the section. So when I was 17 or 18 or whatever it was, and read this book, I barely understood a third of it. I could follow the story, but I've really had to live with it. As I was saying, section 4, I'm not going to try to recreate the full narrative, but Van and his cousin Ada, this is one way of reading this novel, is a love story between the two of them. And in section 4, they are now in their 50s, and after a series of complications, it looks like they might be able to reunite, which is in fact what happens. But they've been apart for many years, since their mid-30s at this point. So Van is driving across the Alps, or at least a facsimile of the Alps. This book is set in a approximation of our Earth, driving to an approximation of Switzerland. And so he's driving, and he's describing the drive. He is remembering his past with Ada, and he is also, through that, considering the nature of what it is to have lived without her for this time, the passage of time, the accretion of time. And this section with the razor blade is actually towards the end of the bit, but it was something I could understand when I was younger, and so it stuck with me. He says, our perception of the past is not marked by the link of succession to as strong a degree as is the perception of the present and of the instance immediately preceding its point of reality. I usually shave every morning, and am accustomed to change the blade in my safety razor after every second shave. Now and then I happen to skip a day, have to scrape off the next a tremendous growth of loud bristle, whose obstinate presence my fingers check again and again between strokes, and in such cases I use a blade only once. This was about 4 days worth of growth. Now, when I visualize a recent series of shaves, I ignore the element of succession. All I want to know is whether the blade left in my silver plow has done its work once or twice. If it was once, the order of the 2 bristle-growing days in my mind has no importance. In fact, I tend to hear and feel the second, grittier morning first, and then to throw in the shaveless day, in consequence of which my beard grows in reverse, so to speak. We shift our view and regard it simply as a coherent reconstruction of elapsed events, some of which are retained by the ordinary mind less clearly. We can engage in a game of light and shadow. And he goes on to describe what memory feels like. Now, this is something that he's done throughout the book, even in the very first section where he and Ada first meet as children, 12-year-olds. They are, even then, speaking about the nature of time. And one way of reading section 4 of Ada is that it is based on Veen's own book on the nature of time. Now, what is particularly interesting here then, the texture of time, not the nature of time, the texture of time. What is particularly interesting here is that Nabokov, when he began Ada, began it as a book called The Texture of Time. And all that survives is this section. And some of the context around Van Veen's professional career as a tarologist. So, if I proceed backwards from the quote, I shall now proceed to consider the past as an accumulation of sensa, not as the dissolution of time implied by immemorial metaphors picturing transition. The, quote, passage of time, unquote, is merely a figment of the mind with no objective counterpart, but with easy spatial analogies. It is seen only in rear view, shapes and shades, auroras and larches silently tumbling away, the perpetual disaster of receding time. We build models of the past and then use them spatiologically to reify and measure time. So my razor blade here has accumulated 4 days. It's like a precipitant, right? It's like a seed, a crystal seed in a jar of precipitate. And the razor blade, the present, the moment right now, is not a sequence. It's not a passage. It's not a stream. It is an aggregate, a precipitant. I'm not doing a great job here. But I'm not here to show how to shave. If you want to learn how to shave, I can go to a different channel. I'm here to talk about Nabokov. Here, the past then is a constant accumulation of images. It can be easily contemplated and listened to, tested and tasted at random, so that it ceases to mean the orderly alternation of linked events that it does in the large theoretical sense. I almost said theological. It is now a generous chaos out of which the genius of total recall, summoned on this summer morning in 1922, can pick anything he pleases. Diamonds scattered all over the parquet in 1888, a russet black-hatted beauty at a Parisian bar in 1901, a humid red rose among artificial ones in 1883, the pensive half smile of a young English governess in 1880, a little girl in 1884 licking the breakfast honey off the badly bitten nails of her spread fingers, the same at 33 confessing, rather late in the day, that she did not like flowers in vases. The awful pain striking him in the side while 2 children with a basket of mushrooms looked on in the merrily burning pine forest. And the startled quonk of a Belgian car which he had overtaken and passed yesterday on a blind bend of the Alpine Highway. Each of those is a reference to an event that has taken place in the novel. A duel that he fought, an argument that he had with Ada, a sexual encounter. And in that way, the book, it's not that it's telling about the nature of time. It isn't really showing the nature of time. It induces the phenomena of time. It's a most extraordinary book. And this idea of time that is not linear, is not chronological, is not a sequence. It's aggregation. And the present is meaningful. An object is meaningful in the sense that it encourages or allows for that aggregation to take place. Splashing with only one hand because I'm bandaged here. I had some surgery on my hand a couple of days ago. So, let me know if you have any questions. He does refer to Bergson in this book, which seems appropriate. I think of music and the extraction of music out of time as a model for human mortality. We can think of ourselves as an object that accumulates the artifacts of memory that we interpret as the passage of time. It's beautiful. It's a beautiful book. So, as always, keep your wits about you.